What's up? This is the first episode of the Doombeard and Dirty South show. My name's Dave Doombeard Arvello. I'm here with
the one Dirty South Owens,
and this will be the first installment of what will be a weekly MMA news show. We've got several important issues that came up in this past week in MMA, as well as some very big cards coming up this weekend that we'll discuss. First off, there's been a change, big shakeup in the UFC Featherweight title picture. Jose Aldo was forced to bow out due to injury against his rematch with Chad Mendes. That kind of leaves the UFC in kind of an odd place. Chad Mendes doesn't have an opponent yet, but yeah, Cub Swanson's been looking pretty good lately. He's had some good fights, man. What do you think about that?
Look, Cub's been looking great. A lot of people think he should have had a title shot already before Chad had that rematch. If we're honest about it, the way Cub lost his first fight, that definitely had an effect on what's taking him so long to get a title shot. People remember that flying knee. He wasn't as competitive, but he went back to the lab, clearly evolved, and he's on the 6-fight winning streak, beat some of the top guys, and the 4 of those wins are finishes.
I agree, man. It's everyone wants to look back at the footage of that double flying knee knockout
right.
That happened in 8 seconds, but the thing is,
could have caught anybody.
That could have happened to anybody. More importantly, that was many years ago.
Right.
People act like he hasn't been training and actually getting better, and that's just one of those things where you get knocked out. You get knocked out.
It's true.
And you can't really train for just getting knocked unconscious. So I think
early.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Cub Swanson versus Chad Mendes, I actually think that could be a really good fight.
It is, and I think that will show who the clear-cut #1 contender is, because what they were going to do is Chad Mendes was going to fight, and if he was to lose, obviously then Cub would get a shot. Hopefully Cub wouldn't have had to get a fight in between that. Unfortunately, maybe lose, and then that throw things off. So this may work out better for everyone involved.
I agree, man. I mean, some people have tossed around the idea of maybe doing an interim championship because people are unsure about how long Aldo might be out.
Yeah.
And that might not be terrible either if they could make that match and both parties would agree to it. But either way, whoever wins that fight, I think, would be the clear-cut
contender. Regardless of what they call it, those two need to fight, and I think that'll show who the clear-cut challenger for Jose Aldo is.
Agreed, man. I think if they're gonna give Mendes a replacement opponent, Cub Swanson, he just got out of his fight, looked really good. He's definitely still going to be in shape. So I think he could easily, get back in there and do it again, even with, this kind of notice. But moving on, this Sunday actually is the culmination of this last season of the Ultimate Fighter.
Yes.
It's the headliner is the rubber match between BJ Penn and Frankie Edgar, but this time it's at featherweight.
Yes.
I think that could be interesting. A lot of people have pegged that as, if BJ doesn't win, he's probably going to retire. What do you think, man?
I think, honestly, regardless of whether Penn wins or loses, I think this is going to be his last fight. I mean, he's accomplished pretty much everything that can be accomplished in his weight class. He's established himself as a legend. I think this fight is almost the UFC doing him a favor. He's like, I want to get this one back for me. This is one fight that I feel like I should have won, and they're giving him that shot again. We know Penn has notoriously not liked to diet and get down to 55, and he's even going down to 45. So obviously he's not playing. He understood what the ramifications were when he accepted this fight, and I think we're going to see a motivated Penn, and I think that's going to be the difference in the fight.
Yeah, it's it'll definitely be interesting. It's like you said, BJ has always kind of had a reputation for not really liking to cut weight. I mean, him fighting at 170, he was just dwarfed by some guys, like Rory McDonald and dudes like that. But
it's still competitive with a lot of these.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the game's evolving. You got to get your premier weight.
Yeah. But I think this being at 45 could be interesting. I think it could either be very good, or it might not go very well. And when you've seen some guys coming off of cutting a lot of weight, sometimes you end up seeing a pretty quick knockout.
That's true.
Just because of that. But I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be an entertaining fight.
Definitely.
But then in the co-main event of that is the Tough Season 19 title between Matt Gutter Van Buren from here in Virginia versus Corey Anderson. You probably, at least saw Matt Van Buren fight some, just being from this region. What are your thoughts on that fight, man?
Look, I think I'm excited about the fight. I think I was surprised at, both of them making it to the finals. But again, that's one thing I like about a tournament style format, the best guy is going to emerge. You know what I mean? It's the best fight possible. It's going to happen, barring someone getting injured, and obviously that didn't happen in this situation. So I think in terms of skill and experience, it's a pretty evenly matched fight. So I'm excited about it. I don't think I favor either one. It just depends on who goes to work the most with the camp. Obviously, they're back with their camps now in preparation for this fight. So guys may fight a lot different than they did on the show. With a real camp, coaches behind them, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's Matt Van Buren. We saw before. When we were looking at some things. His last actual professional fight was a win over a local MMA standout, Najim Wali. That was at 205. Matt Van Buren's a really tough guy. Came back over from California for that fight, and Najim's a very accomplished striker. Really, pretty bad dude. But I think in the show at least, Van Buren's coming off of his last fight. Before he got into the finals, was a big war against Dan Spawn, and Spawn is really good. I mean, he's lit up the Ohio MMA scene. And I think it's interesting. Corey Anderson's wrestling is pretty solid. It's pretty awesome actually. But I think Van Buren will be prepared for that.
I think Van Buren is definitely a little more well-rounded. But sometimes it's about who can. If someone is one-dimensional, if they can put the fight in that dimension, then sometimes they can stifle a guy who may be a little more technical, a little more well-rounded. It just depends. But like I said, I think a lot of how the fight goes is going to be predicated off who was prepared more once they went back to their camps and put that kind of effort into training specifically for this guy. Now they had time to prepare specifically for a certain style, so I think that'll definitely make a difference in the fight.
Yeah, man. Next we got World Series of Fighting coming up in Daytona, Florida, man. Let's go through that, starting from, let's work our way up, man.
Okay, jumping right into it, we got Jose Caceres versus Walter Brito. And if Caceres, a familiar last name to you, is because his brother is Alex Caceres, UFC standout, who will also be fighting this weekend against Faber. From what we see, they both have around the same level of experience. They haven't fought high-level competition. This is a pretty evenly matched fight. Caceres is he's training at MMA Masters right now. They're known for having good grapplers, good strikers. Ricardo Lamas trains there. Luis Palomino trains there. Definitely high level jiu-jitsu there. Walter Brito, we just know he's a Brazilian guy, and he's fought on the Brazilian scene a lot. He's definitely took some tough fights. They both have around 12 pro fights, so again, this is a pretty evenly matched fight. Definitely a toss-up in my eyes.
Yeah, man. I think Jose Caceres, he definitely gets maybe a little bit more recognition than a 6-6 record would give someone else, just because of the fact that he's Bruce Leroy's brother.
True.
But he's got a very good ground game. I mean, pretty much all of his wins are by submissions. I mean, he's he gets them from different positions. I mean, his ground game is definitely very savvy. I think I would give the edge to him just because he has faced accomplished grapplers before. I don't think this is going to necessarily be something new.
Yeah, he definitely has his submissions are varying. He has wins by heel hook, rear naked choke, Kimura, so definitely. Next fight we have Cody Bollinger versus Pablo Alfonso. Bollinger, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but he fought on Bellator versus Samulaev, who is a beast in his own right. He put up a tough fight, but Samulaev was a little bit too much for him. He also fought on Ultimate Fighter, did pretty well on that show. That was at 35 also. So what do you think about that fight?
I think it's unfortunate that Cody Bollinger is always going to be known as the guy who got kicked off the Ultimate Fighter for missing weight, and having some other issues and stuff going on. They had a lot of issues on that show in a season that the women seemed to outshine the men.
Of course, it was their first season, so it's to be expected.
But I believe he's 15-3 right now. I mean, he's been doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I think that it's a fight that I think he could definitely take. I mean, definitely the edge and experience goes to him. But I'd say it's a pretty even fight in my opinion, man. I don't really see it, definitely going either way.
Yeah, Alfonso has a very deceptive record. He's fought some high-level competition, and he's won some crucial fights. A lot of his losses he had were earlier in his career, and he's looked good as of late, so I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Next, we've got Melvin Gillard versus Jay-Z Calvin Conte. Melvin Gillard, is obviously his first fight. He's being cut from the UFC, and as everyone knows, Melvin hits like a Mad truck, very, very explosive. Hate to be cliche, but he's very athletic and explosive. He's a beast. Technical also. Jay-Z Calvin Conte, black belt in jiu-jitsu, very good striking, very good wrestling. At one point, he was considered the best lightweight in the world when he was running through Heroes and K1 in Japan. So this is definitely an evenly matched fight. It's just going to depend on who, at this point in their career, is closer to their prime, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, definitely, I mean, JZ Cavalcante is going to have the edge on the ground. That's kind of always been known as Melvin Gillard's Achilles heel.
True.
He's lost to fighters that, a lot of people didn't think he should have lost to just because it's like, for whatever reason, once stuff goes to the ground, if he can't immediately pop back up, it just seems to be kind of like quicksand for him. But on the feet, though, I mean, Melvin Gillard is, one of the sport's most feared knockout artists. At 155, I don't really think that there is anyone really running around with heavier hands at this point. He's knocked out guys with, punches to the head and plenty of punches to the body.
Punches to the body. One thing about Melvin, he's very good at closing distance. I mean, he covers distance fast. He's in, he's out. I remember, if you guys are familiar with his fight with Jeremy Stevens, he just made him look like he was operating about 20 notches below. And, this is definitely going to be an exciting fight. Two of the best lightweights outside of the UFC or Bellator, so this is definitely going to be a good one. Next, we've got John Fitch versus Dennis Hallman. Fight between two very accomplished grapplers, two amazing grapplers. Hallman is over 50 fights, never been submitted before. Fitch is obviously, one of the best grapplers in MMA. Barring his recent outings, he was definitely one of the best welterweights in the world for a while. What do you think about that fight?
I think for a long time, everyone kind of bought into the notion that John Fitch was just unsubmittable.
Of course,
I think
he
even
did too.
John Fitch bought into that as well.
Right.
Then in his loss in his rematch against Josh Berkman, he kind of did not. He admitted to not even defending the choke at all because he just figured it wasn't going to work. And then all of a sudden he went to sleep, and Josh Berkman dropped him onto the canvas. It's I think as an aside, that post-fight interview with John Fitch was very unfortunate. It's a good example of why you don't interview someone after they got choked unconscious.
Yeah,
but
World Series of Fighting, honestly, guys, you got to tighten up. You don't give a guy a post-fight interview after he just rendered unconscious. He's operating off autopilot. Big respect to Fitch for trying to get his wits back together, and obviously he was still speaking coherently, but he wasn't making. It wasn't making any sense to call for a title shot after you got put to sleep in a few minutes, and then again he said he thought it was a good fight. It was no fight. Rock submitted.
Yeah, I think this fight, it's two really accomplished grapplers to the point where I think Fitch actually might try to work in a little bit more kickboxing this time, maybe. But honestly, I would like to go with Hallman in this one. He's someone who's dealt with a lot of personal adversity in his life, but leading up to him getting released from the UFC, and I would really like to see him kind of rebound and really kind of bounce back and be able to defeat a guy like John Fitch.
Right. Yeah. No, that would be a wonderful story, and I got to disagree on that one. I'm going to give Fitch the edge because I think Fitch consistently has been fighting a little bit higher level competition. I think Fitch is the bigger, stronger guy. Hallman, he had problems, making 55 a few times his last few fights, but the fact that he can even get in range for 55 shows, there may be some size discrepancy. Hallman's also a very slick and savvy grappler. Only guy to submit Matt Hughes twice, by the way. Yeah. So, he's definitely not going to be, out of his element if it becomes a grappling fight. But Fitch, I think, is a little bit more well-rounded, and his wrestling mixed with his jiu-jitsu may make the difference. He's a black belt on the Camarillo. They have a very hybrid system of grappling. It's perfect for MMA. He calls it guerrilla jiu-jitsu. And I think that aggressive style, it may make the difference in this fight.
Yeah, we got the headlining fight on that card is notorious Nick Newell versus Justin Gaethje. I think that's a really intriguing fight. For those of you who may not remember, Nick Newell is well known for being a very accomplished and undefeated MMA fighter, despite the fact that one of his arms ends at the elbow. So really he's only throwing punches with one hand because he only possesses one hand. But he's remained undefeated. He's fought for XFC and some other very legitimate promotions coming up. He's managed to choke some guys out despite only having one fully developed arm. What are your thoughts on that fight, man?
Listen, man, I'm going to be honest. When I first heard Nick Newell, was going around the Cinderella story, this guy's really good. And, I kind of thought, maybe he's not fighting tough guys. when he got matched up on XFC with Eric Reynolds. Yeah. I thought, now I was familiar with Reynolds. I saw him fight on Bellator. You know, he fought Iban Iberico. He fought Masvidal. He did okay in those fights. I honestly thought that Reynolds was gonna, you know, wrap it up. You know, he said, you know, Eric was a rap Reynolds. I thought he was gonna win that, but Nick Newell destroyed him. Just, you know, dominated him. Also, Nick Newell also, who was that he beat on World Series of Fighting? The first fight, that was the guy, the Ultimate Fighter.
Keon Caldwell.
Keon Caldwell destroyed him also. So, you know, this guy, again, you know, when we talk about, you know, let's be honest, elephant in the room, like as you mentioned, you know, he's operating without, you know, a fully functional limb the same way. It's not like he was an adult and for some reason he was in an accident. This guy was born like this, so he's spent his life like this. It's nothing new. So I'm sure he's found a lot of ways, as we've seen, especially with some of the ankle locks and chokes that he's got, to adapt and make it somewhat of a benefit for him, perfect for his style. But if I'm honest about it, Gaethje, he's a beast. This kid's wrestling is sick. His striking is good. He's strong. He's a ridiculous athlete. He punished Jose Aldo, destroyed Dan Lozon, and I just honestly, this is going to be a tough one for Nick Newell. Nick Newell is obviously predominantly a grappler. His wrestling credentials his wrestling isn't on the same level as Gaethje, and I think Gaethje is too aggressive, too much of a beast for him.
Yeah, you know, Gaethje, it's like, you know, he's really, you know, made a mockery of some of these recent tough guys that World Series of Fighting has put in front of him.
As you said, tough guys.
He, you know, Dan Lozon, you know, a lot of people, you know, might, you know, say some stuff about him just because his record in the UFC wasn't that great. But, you know, his record outside of the UFC is really good.
He was young when he fought in the UFC, very young.
And, you know, he's really good and a really tough game dude. And
got some good wins outside the UFC. Yeah, he's got some tough wins. I mean, Bobby Green, who's doing very well in the UFC right now, Lozon's got a win over him. So he's definitely fought good guys. And again, Gaethje just, you know, made him look like an amateur.
Yeah, you know, Gaethje punished his legs to the point where he couldn't even stand anymore. You know, similarly, you know, he similarly tuned up Richard Petishnak. You know, and
if you talk about the way he's beating these guys, like you said, it was the leg kicks against Lozon. With Jay-Z, it was constant pressure and elbows from the clinch. This guy is showing a well-rounded game for someone so early in his career, and he's got a lot of tools, and the potential is just through the roof.
Yeah. So all in all, I think you know, World Series of Fighting is gonna, you know, be a really entertaining fight. You know, entertaining card. So, you know, I think that'll be cool. Yeah, the event that everyone's been, you know, waiting for the most part anyway, you know, as part of this UFC Fight Week that's been going on, is UFC 175
Finally.
In Las Vegas. Really stacked card from top to bottom, 2 title fights on it.
Yes.
You know, we'll start, you know, talk about that. You know, we'll start from the bottom up. You know, the first fight of the night is Luke Zacharich versus Guillermo Julio. I think it could be a good fight. You know, obviously, you know, Guillermo's a, you know, Brazilian guy, you know, has a really accomplished ground game. He's coming into the UFC, from what I remember, on a pretty steady string of submission wins. So, you know, he's got a very, you know, good ground game. But Luke Zacharich, he's, you know, an early protege of George Gurgel. You know, he was on The Ultimate Fighter as well. You know, also a well-known, you know, grappler, especially in like the, you know, Ohio, Michigan MMA circuit. So I think it could be a good fight, man. What do you think, man?
I also think it's going to be a good fight. Well, one thing about it, it's definitely an evenly matched fight. All right, none of these guys have fought a super high level of competition, so, but they're around the same level. So this would be a good barometer to see what kind of guys will be matched up in the future.
Yeah. Next up is you know, long time you know, WEC and UFC standout George Root, who is the tallest person to ever fight at 135 pounds, at being a little over 6'1". How he makes that weight, I have no idea, but you know, he makes it work. He's fighting Rob Font, you know, a CES MMA champion. You know, put up a really good record up in New England. You know, is coming in with a lot of hype behind him. You know, I think it could be a good fight. Both guys possess, you know, pretty good striking, you know, pretty solid ground game. Both have shown that they're capable of knocking guys out. You know, what are your thoughts, man?
Well, look, if anyone familiar with local MMA anywhere around Jersey, Philly, they're going to be familiar with Fawn. Again, he's got a good following. He's put on some good shows up there. So this is, even though Roop has a lot of experience, this isn't a fight that will be out of someone's depth for a debut fight, solely because Roop, he hasn't looked his best recently. Yeah, one thing we know about Roop is he is a handful for anyone on any given night. Again, like you said, he's extremely tall for the weight class. He knows how to use that reach. The only person that maybe capitalized on some of the deficiencies he had in the striking department recently was Hominick. But again, Hominick, you're talking about one of the better strikers, at that time in the UFC. Again, Roop beat Josh Grisby, where he was a heavy underdog in that fight. He also beat the Korean Zombie. So again, he's faced some high-level competition, and he's beat some high-level competition, and he's much, much more experienced. I would definitely give him the edge in this fight, just based off experience alone.
Yeah, I think so too. As far as experience and just the quality of fighters that he's faced before, he's definitely far ahead of Rob Font and that. But George Roop, despite him being a very tall fighter, sometimes doesn't fight the way some tall fighters do, and also despite his height, his reach actually isn't quite as much of an advantage as you think it would be.
Right.
Despite his height, he kind of has a little bit of a shorter reach. But I definitely give him the edge in that. Next up is Chris Camozzi versus Bruno Santos. Chris Camozzi, ever since him, being on the Ultimate Fighter, he's been a real mainstay in the UFC's middleweight division. He's put together several streaks before, has just, never really been able to, win those kind of next level fights. But I think, him versus Bruno Santos, a guy who's also fought, some quality competition, both abroad and in the UFC. I think that, stacks up to be pretty good. What do you think, brother? Again,
Camozzi, he's one of those guys, regardless of, it's hard to put a good streak together sometimes in the UFC, but that's definitely not a reflection of his skill. Camozzi's a very skilled fighter. As you said, since he's got off the show, he's definitely improved leaps and bounds and continues to improve. You see it. I definitely think he has a little bit of an edge over Santos in terms of obviously experience and well-roundedness. So this is going to be a good one also. Definitely action-packed fight. Both of these guys always put on a show and come to fight, but I'm going to give Camozzi the edge on this one.
Yeah, I think also in the striking department, Camozzi has a decided edge. He trains with a lot of really bad dudes at Factory X Muay Thai in Colorado. He trains with guys like Brian the Predator Rogers, a longtime Bellator standout. Among some of these other guys, besides just his brother, he trains with Joe Warren, the baddest man on the planet. Chase Hackett, otherwise known as Prison Stare, and also recent Cage Fury Fighting Championships flyweight champion Quick Nick Honstein recently took the long defended belt at the flyweight division from Sean Santella. I was actually there for that fight. I think he was brought in, and everyone expected Santella to get that win, and then probably get it called up to the UFC. But Nick Honstein put on a really good showing against him and thoroughly beat a good guy. But Chris Camozzi's training with a lot of killers, with great striking, just great coaching all around. I think I definitely give him the edge.
Well, it definitely says something about the level of training he's getting, and again, that added on to that experience factor, I definitely feel good about giving him the edge in this fight.
Yeah, this next up is Kenny Robertson versus Ildemar Alcantara. Obviously, Alcantara, he's known for his grappling. Is one of the laundry list of accomplished, heavily lauded grapplers coming out of Brazil.
Right.
Kenny Robertson is a dude who's, he's done some really good things, had some, losses and some good wins as well in the UFC. He had a pretty, despite losing, had a pretty good showing for a little bit against Yushin Okami. He's beat some really quality dudes in his time. What do you think about that fight?
Robinson's he's a beast. For those not familiar with him, I know some of his fights have been buried on undercards before, but if you remember his fight with Aaron Simpson, he put on an excellent show. He put on an excellent show. He showed he's a well-rounded fighter with a lot of experience. He's got good wrestling, good striking. Haven't seen him in too many positions where he would have to use jiu-jitsu, but obviously, his submission defense, since, he's not losing that way, it says something. He's well-rounded and he's definitely a grinder. I'm going to give him the edge on this one. I would definitely favor him this one, once again, based off experience alone. He doesn't always win the battle, but I think he's going to play more of a fact in this one. His opponent, is not very experienced in the UFC at this caliber competition. He's also a good fighter, but I think he depends on his jiu-jitsu a lot. And at this level, being one-dimensional, regardless of how good you are at the dimension, it's going to be tougher against the higher caliber guys.
Yeah. So the next one is Uriah Hall, otherwise known as the Tough Beast. Really lit up the season of The Ultimate Fighter. He was on at some of the more vicious knockouts that the show's ever seen. He's fighting Thiago Santos. I think this stacks up to be interesting because Uriah Hall really saved his UFC career with his recent win over Chris Leben. And Thiago Santos, I believe he also fought on one of the Ultimate Fighter Brazil seasons. Put up a pretty solid record on there as well. But had a recent setback to Cesar Mutanchi Ferreira, Vitor Belfort's protege. That was by stoppage. I think this fight stacks up to be pretty interesting. Santos definitely has the edge on the ground. Uriah Hall, he's more known as a guy who, will either, try to get back up or, in the case of him versus Dylan Andrews, TKO a guy from his back with strikes. But on the feet, though, everyone knows that, when he can turn it on, Uriah Hall is some of the most creative and just devastating striking in that division. What are your thoughts, man?
Look, Uriah Hall's got a lot of power. A lot of guys, no knock against it, but I wasn't one of the guys who felt like, he was the next best thing. A lot of people were comparing him to Anderson Silva early, saying a lot of things. And again, that's not his fault. He's playing the cards that he's dealt. But at the same time, these guys that he was beating on The Ultimate Fighter, these aren't UFC caliber guys yet. When guys are on The Ultimate Fighter, they are not in the UFC yet. They are not UFC caliber fighters yet. Whether they will become that or not, that's yet to be seen. So obviously striking is his strength, but I've got to see how his striking is against other good strikers before I say he's a great striker. One thing I do know is he's got a lot of experience striking. He used to fight in that league that Chuck Norris used to have back in the day.
The World Combat League.
World Combat League. A lot of experience there. He's a very skilled guy in the striking aspect, and again, he's a beast. His grappling, to say it was a weakness would be an understatement. He makes some very basic mistakes in some of his fights, and again, knocking someone out from the bottom, that impressive as can be, but that's lightning doesn't strike twice. I can't really see that happening again. You know what I mean? That's also says something about the type of guy you're fighting too. In this fight, I'm gonna have to give his opponent the edge. I believe that he'll either be controlled or maybe he may lose by submission. I'm rooting for him. I like the guy. He does seem like a good guy. He always comes off. He conveys himself well. He seems like a good guy. But I don't think I think too much pressure was put on him too early. Similar to the way things were with Felipe Nova. And Dana was comparing him to Anderson. Same thing. So.
Yeah, I think he was very hyped up, and then honestly in the Ultimate Fighter finale against Kelvin Gastelum in a fight that really no one expected Kelvin Gastelum to even get there in the first place. Much less face Uriah Hall and win. Uriah Hall laid an egg in that fight, to be honest. Got thoroughly beaten, and then in his next fight after that, he fought John Doomsday Howard, who's returning to the UFC and fighting up a weight class. In a fight that was just kind of strange because they were being very complimentary to each other, dapping it up, hugging, and spent a lot of time wrestling actually because I think both of them were trying to secure a win. Doomsday ended up winning that one, so he had dropped 2 straight. And in his recent fight, I think he kind of has turned it back on again because in one round of a fight, he devastated Chris Leben, who's known as being a tough guy, and maybe has been dominated on the ground and stuff before by some guys, but Uriah Hall turned it on and really put it on to the point where Chris Leben, a guy who's known for being just tough as nails, retired from the fight in between rounds.
Not to keep beating up on Hall, but to me a win over Leben at this point isn't the same as a win over Leben 4 or 5 years ago. No knock on Leben, but I know he's very vocal about it, so I'm not bringing anything out that isn't accessible. He's talked about issues he's had in his personal life, motivation and things like that. If his fight against Derek Brunson is any, if that shows, exactly where he is in his career, then again, it's a win, and he definitely needed that win, and he got it. But I'm not sold yet. I hope he does get the win. Hope Hall does get the win, but I'm not banking on it.
Right on. In the quote unquote main event of the undercard, for the first time in many years, we see Uriah Faber fighting on the undercard,
maybe ever,
of a UFC fight. He's fighting against Bruce Leroy Caceres. In that main event, of the undercard. It's a bantamweight fight, and while I acknowledge that Uriah Faber has fought a lot of the luminaries of the sport, both at featherweight and at bantamweight, this fight just kind of honestly puzzles me. As much as I loved Bruce Leroy as a fighter, I kind of think it's kind of a
squash match,
little bit of a silly fight. I mean,
initially when this fight was announced, I felt the same way everyone else felt. Like, this makes absolutely no sense. But when I sit back and think about it, listen, Caceres is on, besides this no contest, which was a win, he will have a 5-fight win streak, okay? 5 fights in the UFC, that's hard to come by regardless of the level of competence. I don't care if you're fighting 5 debut guys. It's hard to get 5 wins in a row. So he's definitely in a position to take a step up. The fact that his Faber, unfortunately, may be a little bit too much of a step up. But, from the UFC, in the UFC's defense, like you said, Faber has fought pretty much everyone who is anyone. Faber, in the UFC, he's had a problem with the highest caliber of fighters, but everyone else he has not only beaten, he's absolutely destroyed them.
Yeah.
So this was almost a fight that needed to happen. We don't have. What are we gonna do with Caceres? Because he needs to step up in competition. But who can he fight? What are we gonna do with Faber? Because he needs to fight. Can't fight for a belt again. A lot of people, well, not right now, a lot of people have problems with him fighting for the belt last time, even though he did earn a shot. Yeah. So he needs to fight. This fight just made sense. No one for this guy, no one for this guy. This guy's been winning. Faber is a perennial contender. He's always going to be at the top, and he consistently shows that. So they said, why not put them together? Unfortunately, though, life isn't a fairy tale, and I don't think that Caceres is going to pull it out. I think Faber is going to submit him or TKO him in the first round. Two totally different caliber fighters.
Yeah, I agree. Barring some type of
element.
Unforeseen kind of one strike knockout that might catch Faber coming in, I just really don't see Caceres having much of a chance. Starting off on the main card, it's Marcus Brimage versus Russell Doan. Russell Doan, recent addition to the UFC. But he looked pretty good in his opening bout. A very grappling heavy match. But Marcus Brimage is going to be coming back looking for a win. He started off his UFC career pretty nicely. Thoroughly beat Jimmy Hedis, who is really good at 145 pounds.
Very high.
Really a lot of people didn't give Brimage much of a chance just due to Hedis' grappling acumen. But, Brimage thoroughly dismantled him pretty much.
Brimage, if I'm not mistaken, he was an underdog in his first 3 fights. And, again, he was always pitted against guys who were supposed to be the next best thing. And, he surprised the UFC, I'm sure, in every one of them. This is Brimage's first fight after his loss with Conor McGregor, who, it didn't go long enough to really assess Brimage's performance, besides, talking about how good McGregor's performance was. And again, he also said that a lot of the things outside of the cage, some die-hard Conor McGregor fans and a lot of things got to him. But this is his first fight back. I'm sure he's cleared his mind and he needs this. I think he's going to have the edge because of his experience and his tools. He's very fast, very strong, small for the weight class in terms of size, but he's definitely strong and is very mobile. And I just think it's going to be a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think, Brimage, while he may be, pretty short for 145 pounds, especially with, how tall some of these guys are getting nowadays at 145 pounds, he's a powerhouse. He's very squat, very muscular, packs a lot of power. And if Jimmy Hedis, who's a very accomplished, judo player, who has amazing throws and takedowns, couldn't really, get his game going against Marcus Brimage. I just don't really think Russell Doan's got it.
Not at all.
I really don't see him being able to really get Brimage to the ground even and on the feet.
And then keeping him there.
Him
there. This guy, Brimage is a guy who's constantly moving.
Yeah, he can pop up like that and, just on the feet. In my opinion, it's just not even close. I mean, Brimage just has just speed and the different angles that he has and just his power, I think, is just going to be way too much for Russell Doan.
Yeah, Brimage definitely has a huge advantage in this fight, and I would definitely give him the edge.
Next we got Matt Meathead Mitrione versus Stefan the Skyscraper Struve. This is Stefan Struve's first fight since coming back from surgery that he had to get to address a heart issue. Yeah, Matt Mitrione again was requested Stefan Struve as an opponent, even though Stefan Struve contends that he knew that he wasn't ready to fight yet.
Right.
That kind of rubbed Struve the wrong way, so he was very happy to oblige him in his request and fight him. Lately Stefan Struve has said that, in his opinion, anyone outside of the top 5 in the UFC's heavyweight division, he feels he can easily blow through. And I'd say there's a pretty solid amount of truth to that. When you look at the people that he's lost to, Junior Dos Santos, no shame in losing to that guy. That guy's a beast. Roy Nelson, despite how some people would judge his physique, his fighting style, Roy Nelson has the power to knock anyone out. He's shown that.
Roy Nelson probably has the best overhand right in MMA, and against an opponent who's 6'11", who wasn't really comfortable at using his range like that, it was a recipe for disaster. And I also think Struve got better from that fight, went back to the lab. As you said, the only guys that beat Struve are the best of the best. Again, Struve is an extremely, extremely talented and well-rounded guy. And he continues to get better. I think every fight that Struve has, he gets better after that fight. So in the future, it's going to be worse for anyone who fights him. Than it would have been had they fought him a fight or even 2 fights prior.
I agree. It's funny because Stefan Struve came into the UFC with a lot of experience from fighting in Europe, but when he came in, he was 6'11" and was extremely light from a weight standpoint. Looked very skinny. I mean, granted he is tall, but he was only weighing about 230.
Right.
Now Stefan Struve comes into most of his fights weighing in right at 265. He's officially over 7 feet tall now, and he started to really use his range to good effect. Stipe Miocic is a guy who's really lighting up the heavyweight division right now.
Right.
And Stefan Struve just devastated him when they fought. Obviously with the guy being over 7 feet tall, the type of range and the power that guy generates too.
He can generate those punches. Exactly. And not only that, but off a win over Miocic, you got to understand what that's going to do to his confidence. You know what I mean? And then there's a difference between good fighters and dangerous fighters. Miocic was definitely a dangerous fighter. To get a win, a dominating win like that of a guy, that's definitely going to do something to your confidence. A young fighter like Struve, confidence is key. Confidence is huge. When it comes to Mitrione, again, Mitrione is also a good fighter, but he's still pretty early in his development. I don't think he's close to reaching his potential. He's another guy who also gets fast at a very, very fast rate. He's an athlete, like a ridiculous athlete.
Former NFL player.
Exactly. This is a guy who he could do a lot of things outside of MMA had he chose to do them. He's a real heavyweight. A lot of times you got heavyweights who are just, blown up light heavies, but no, Mitrione is a solid dude, and again, he's a student of the game. He's constantly learning, but I think Struve is going to be a little bit too much for him. Huge discrepancy in experience and to me in caliber of competition. They both have a common opponent, and again, that's Roy Nelson. But I just think at this point in their development, Struve is a little bit further along in comparison to where he is to reaching his peak than Mitrione is.
Yeah, I agree. It's Mitrione was recently submitted by his fellow Ultimate Fighter castmate Brendan Schaub. Choked him unconscious with a darce. On top of that, it's a lot of people forget because it's been a while. But Stefan Struve actually has a very good ground game, and the things he can do, especially with his triangles and arm bars and stuff, just due to the fact that his length is just ridiculous. That's a threat too. That I don't really think that if Mitrione were to take him down, I think that would be even worse.
It would be. It definitely. But I mean, when you've got a guy who's comfortable enough to pull guard in the UFC against UFC caliber fighters, that says something. He pulled a similar, like it was almost a flying triangle, but he basically pulled guard against Pat Barry, set that triangle up from the top. That's how confident he was in being on the bottom. Barry lifted him up, clean over his head, brought him down. He didn't panic. He hooked the leg, locked it up. I definitely think if it touches the ground, it's going to be bad for Mitch Round.
Yeah. Next up is the co-main event, the women's 135-pound title fight against Alexis Davis versus Ronda Rousey. With a lot of Ronda Rousey fights, obviously the UFC and some members of the MMA media are going to do everything they can to hype up the fight and try to talk about how the challenger has, these certain ways that they could potentially win and, certain advantages and stuff. But
this girl is different. This girl has a chance. You're going to hear that a lot. We heard over the years with Anderson Silva. We heard it over the years with every challenger that Jose Aldo fights. And it's not to disparage these opponents, but you got to understand, this is a sport, so it has to be some selling element. It has to be some element where, it could feel like it could be an upset. But honestly, Ronda Rousey is the best female mixed martial artist on the planet. Physically, she's a beast. She's an Olympic caliber athlete. Mentally, she has the mental fortitude this woman believes she can beat anyone in the world, and so far she's shown. Again, you want to talk about incredible Olympic caliber grappling, and I just think physically she's going to be too much for Davis. Skill-wise, again, of course they're on the same level, if not Ronda surpassing her grappling. Striking, I do give Alexis Davis a striking advantage because her Muay Thai is good, but she does not possess knockout power. If you land punches, we've seen that Ronda's not a grappler who's averse to strikes. She will get in there, she will exchange, she will get dirty to get that clinch. Once she gets the clinch, Alexis Davis is a jiu-jitsu black belt, but when you're landing in positions that are terrible, like side mount because of a throw, you really don't have time to get your game off. It's not like she started in her guard with her posture broken down.
Yeah. I think, just kind of like you said, man, it's like, while, Alexis Davis, her striking might be better just due to, also having just more time in the sport.
Of course.
It's a lot of Ronda Rousey's opponents have been accomplished strikers, but when you maybe fire off only a shot or two before you're taking a ride and getting thrown, that kind of mitigates a lot of that. And her jiu-jitsu also, it's only really going to go but so far, because it's like you said as well, when you're landing in some of the worst positions you can be in because of throws, it's hard. I mean, at that point.
In MMA, this is in MMA, there's sweat involved, there's a lot of strength involved. You're not just fighting your opponent, you're fighting the clock. So there's a lot of advantages that Ronda has in this fight. Besides, to me, being more skilled, and I just think it's Ronda's fight to lose. I think she is justifiably the overwhelming favorite in this fight.
Yeah, definitely. The main event, the UFC middleweight title.
Oh yeah.
Chris Weidman versus Lyoto Machida,
the Dragon.
Yeah.
At 85.
Yeah, I think since Lyoto Machida has dropped down to 85, he's looked great. A lot of people would point out that, Machida was even a former heavyweight.
Oh, yeah.
But even at 205, he was never, really, shredded.
He's weighing in at 203.
Yeah.
If you're weighing in consistently 2 pounds on the weight, you're not cutting much water, if any at all. This guy, he's it's not that he wasn't serious about his career then, because he clearly was one of the best. He was the champion at 205. And, at 85, he seems even faster. You know what I mean? A lot of times we talk about speed because it looks fast, but Lyoto is a master at creating collisions, lulling these guys into a false sense of security, and then when they overcommit, diving in on them. That plus that blinding speed, that confidence, it's going to be tough for Weidman. Machida has some of the highest percentage of takedown defense in the UFC. A lot of people may not notice, but he has a sumo background. He's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Lyoto Machida, I think he could beat Weidman's kryptonite. One thing I doubt Weidman will fall for is the lunging and plodding forward and trying to rush to catch Machida, as some people say, because he's running. He didn't fall for it against Anderson. A lot of people may not have understood exactly what Anderson was doing, but Anderson was lulling him, trying to bring him in, trying to get him to be impatient and feel embarrassed. He didn't fall for it. He measured his strikes. He threw combos. He didn't throw single shots. So his fight IQ is definitely there. He comes from a great camp, that Cerro Longo camp. So they're gonna have a game plan for Machida. But I just think Machida's a little bit too much, and I would definitely give him the edge in this fight.
Yeah, I think since dropping down to 185, Machida, pretty viciously and quickly knocked out Mark Munoz, a former training partner of his, and then also looked amazing against Gegard Mousasi, who's been a long time really top guy in the sport, both at 205 and at 185. He's been around for a very long time, been very good. Lyoto Machida looked great against a guy like that.
Amazing.
And it's only really a testament to Mousasi's toughness that Machida wasn't able to put him away.
Exactly.
Because a lot of other guys would not have been able to take what Mousasi took from him.
And honestly, the more Mousasi fights, the better that Machida's win is going to look over him, because Mousasi looked amazing in his last fight too. And that just says, that's a testament to how skilled Machida is and how much better his body fits at 185. He looks... not that has anything to do with someone's fighting ability, but he's in peak condition right now.
Yeah, I think obviously Chris Weidman, he's a really accomplished guy. A guy who had a pretty emphatic win over a training partner of ours, Filthy Tom Lawler, and anyone who actually manages to stop Tom Lawler obviously is
pretty
good. It's something that not a lot of guys have been able to accomplish.
Of course.
A guy known for extreme toughness in the sport, but
comebacks.
Yeah, comebacks too. But I think Weidman, he's really good, and the interesting thing about this fight is the fact that he was able to deal pretty well with a very elusive and kind of a striker who has very good power, but more importantly very good accuracy, because that's something Anderson Silva's always had. Just pinpoint accuracy and been able to really hit guys on the button and take them out. But I think it's interesting, man. It's honestly a fight where it's just really tough for me to call.
It's a tough one, but it's intriguing. Everyone, I hope you're even a fraction as excited about this fight as me. Of course, it has that revenge, that avenge element to it. Of course, he wants to. Machida wants to avenge his buddy Anderson Silva, who's not just his training partner, but they're good friends. And this is going to be an amazing fight. And not to downplay Weidman's win, because he went in there and did what he had to do twice. Even before the freak accident with Silva's leg, he may have been on his way to winning that fight before that. But again, like I said earlier when I was talking about leaving, at what point in someone's career is it the same as a win over someone a few years ago? Weidman did what he was supposed to do, but I don't feel that because of that win that he's on this level. For a champ who's as good as he is, and clearly, on paper, the best in the world 185, there's a lot that we don't know, and that's not due to any fault of his, because he's been doing what he's supposed to do, and that's blow through his opponents. But a lot of these guys haven't put him in a position for us to be forced to find out these things. One thing we do know is before that Anderson Silva fight, it was as soon as he touches someone, they go down. But initially, in the first fight before the knockout, Anderson was stuffing a lot of takedowns. We've seen Chris frustrated, so it'll be very interesting to see if he can figure out the great enigma that is Machida.
I agree, man. It's just one of those fights where I'm obviously just I can't. It's hard for me to really pick who could really win it. I think it's intriguing on both sides. It'll just be a fight that I really just look forward to watch.
This is a good time to be an MMA fan.
Indeed. But that'll pretty much wrap it all up for tonight. We'd like to thank Quaker Steak Lube on West Broad Street here in Richmond, Virginia, for having us and letting us do the first episode of the show here. Might end up being a little bit of a repeat thing. And also like to give a shout out to Cageside Fight Company.
Yeah, Cageside MMA. Check them out for all your MMA gear and apparel. We also want to give that shout out to MMA Institute. That's where we train at. This is how we met. And
yeah, I think this has been good, and I think I'm definitely looking forward to this being the first of many episodes of the Doombeard and Dirty South show going forward, man.
It's only gonna get better, baby. It's only gonna get better.